Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about the Zoom difficulties. I'm Dr. Justin Glisan. I'm the state climatologist of Iowa, and I work for the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, the Climatology Bureau. What we'll look at today are current conditions on the ground across the state and then spring outlooks moving forward for the growing season. Okay, so the first set of slides we'll look at is the Iowa summary for 2019. We'll look at how monthly temperatures and precipitation varied throughout the year, and we'll also look at county level observations. Now, each of the 99 counties in the state of Iowa has a National Weather Service co-op station or multiple co-op stations, along with civilian rain gauges called COCORAS or the COCORAS network. So we use this data to get a very good idea of how temperature and precipitation acted across the counties and as a statewide average. And then we'll look at the last 2 years. We've been in a pretty wet stretch of months and years, and I'll kind of give you an idea of where a majority of the rainfall, a majority of the precipitation has fallen across the state. Okay, so this first plot here is the Iowa average temperature for a given month, January to December. I'll get you oriented on the plot. The vertical axis here is the departure from normal. Normal is our 30-year climatology, or the average that we would expect for a given month. So the lower that blue bar, the colder that month was. On the flip side of that, if you look at the red bars, those are positive temperature departures, or those were warmer months than what we would expect for July or September or December. On the horizontal axis, we have the monthly temperature, so the average temperature across the state. What we saw for 2019 across the state was an average temperature of 46.8 degrees, and that's 1.2 degrees below average. So if we look at our rankings across the state, we have 148 years of temperature and precipitation records in my office at the Wallace Building. This was the 29th coldest year on record. So a fairly cold year, not extremely cold, but as you can see on the plot, there are more blue bars pointing down than there are red bars pointing up. So that does tell us that we were colder than average. The last year that was colder than this year was 2014. And if we look at notable monthly events, September was the 9th warmest September on record, and then October was the 13th coldest. So kind of a flip between those 2 months. But overall, if you look at the variability or how far below and above those bars are about the line, you know, we tend to be 1 to 2 degrees above or below average. Temperature kind of averages out pretty well. Now, this plot shows us the actual average temperature across the state for the year. Now, the greener the greens, the colder the colors. We don't see any brown on that map. We do see some gray, so that's around climatology, or what we would expect for a given area. But as you can see, most of Iowa was below average by 1 to 2 degrees. Most of the upper Midwest was also, in fact, below average. So we did have a cooler than average year across much of the Midwest. Okay, so from that statewide average temperature map on the previous slide, now we'll actually look at the county level temperatures that we saw across the state. So in the 99 counties, you can see that those northern counties are in the blues. So those are typically colder counties. And then we go down to southern Iowa, you see a lot of red. Average temperatures in the upper 40s to 50s for the annual average temperature. So a gradation as you go north to south, colder north, warmer south. That's typically what we see in the mid-latitudes. So nothing really stands out there. Now what we're looking at is the Iowa monthly precipitation. This is a similar plot to temperature, except we've changed the coloring scale here. So where you see blue bars, that was a wetter month, and the higher that blue bar, the wetter the month it was. On the flip side of that, the red bars indicate drier months. So the further down that red bar goes, the drier the month was. If we take all those bars and we average them together, precipitation was about 41.63 inches across the state for 2019, and that's about 6.36 inches above normal. So again, looking back at 148 years of records, it was the 12th wettest year on record. Now, an interesting thing is the wetter year last occurred in 2018, so just last year. And with 45.08 inches during 2018, it happened to be the second wettest year on record, behind the Great Flood year of 1993, where a little over 48 inches of precipitation fell across the state. Now, in terms of interesting months, you can see that there are more blue bars and they're higher up than the red bars are lower down. So February was the 7th wettest February on record. And also of note, it was the snowiest February in 132 years of snowfall records. So a very snowy and a very cold February. May was the 5th wettest May on record. And then if we take the spring months together, it was the 6th wettest spring. September was the 14th wettest, October was the 8th wettest, and then we get into fall, September, October, November, 7th wettest. So a very, very wet stretch of months. Now, if we look back at 2018, fall was 3rd wettest, and then getting into winter, winter was also the 3rd wettest. So that produced a lot of subsoil moisture that is still within the soil profile, and we'll talk about those in a few slides. Now, if we look at the year as a whole, precipitation didn't fall all over the state. There were drier parts of the state, but if we look at the county map, which we will shortly, you'll see where the wetter parts of the state were. So yes, Iowa had a very wet year in 2019, again, 12th wettest on record. What this plot shows us is the county level precipitation departures. So how much above or below we were for the calendar year. Wherever you see blue on this map, those counties were above average. Wherever you see red on this map, the counties were below average or drier than normal. The key takeaway here is you don't see any red. We're very, very wet across the state, especially in the northwest corner, and then along the Iowa-Wisconsin and Iowa-Illinois border, where we see those darker blues. So yes, a very wet year for specific parts of the state. Looking at the central part of Iowa, even into western Iowa, anywhere from 2 to 5 inches above average. So those are the driest counties across the state, but still all 99 counties were wetter than average. So yes, knowing that 2019 was 12th wettest and then 2018 was 2nd wettest, if we combine those 2 years and then look at those 2 calendar years historically, given our record keeping 148 years of observations, 2018 to 2019 were the 2 wettest years on record. Those 2 calendar years were the wettest 2 years on record. I'll say it again. That's pretty substantial. If you look at the rankings on the right-hand side here, you can see in 2018 to 2019, almost 87 inches of precipitation across the state. Typically, the average for the annual average for the state of Iowa is 34 to 35 inches. So a pretty substantial increase in the amount of precipitation that we saw just over the last 2 years. Again, looking back at those 2 years, 2018, 10th wettest June, 3rd wettest fall, 3rd wettest winter, and then we get into very wet fall and spring in 2019. So a combination of events that produced very wet conditions across the state. Now that we know that those 2 years, 2018 and 2019, were the wettest 2-year stretch on record, it's interesting to look at where precipitation actually fell across the state. So we were above average across the state, but wherever you see those blue colors, that's where we had way above average precipitation. So along the Iowa-Wisconsin border, even the Iowa-Minnesota border, you're looking at precipitation totals 30 to 40 inches above average for those 2 years, which is a very substantial amount of precipitation. So finally, I want to thank you for sitting through this presentation. I hope you find the information beneficial. I hope you've learned some new tools that you can use moving forward for your own farms, for your own businesses. Here's my email, justin.glisan@iowaagriculture.gov, and my telephone number, and again, the Climatology Bureau website. Please reach out to me if you should ever have any questions. I'm always happy to talk. If I can't get you the information you need, I'll find somebody who can, but I'm here as a resource for you. So please use me as a resource and contact me if you ever have any needs or questions. Thank you.